Hey, I'm Morgan,
I'm Chris. Welcome to the Midlife Mud,
where we're going to bring the real shit, all the grit, and zero clue of what to do in these middle years.
Oh, and by the way, because this is all about feeling less alone, we really want to hear from you too.
Yeah, don't leave us hanging. We'd love it if you'd take a sec to visit themidlifemud.com and leave us a message.
All right, tighten those boots and let's get going. Hello there.
Hi.
Welcome back.
We're back again in the mud.
And we're at our usual exhausted PM time of recording.
You know what's weird is I kind of feel like I'm just used to it, so it's kind of comfortable.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know. I was like all nervous last time.
What did you have for dinner?
I made Philly cheesesteaks. Except I didn't have the bread. I just ate it in a bowl, and it was really good. It was a new recipe. I usually use ground beef, but I used flank steak cut up into strips.
Your dinner was better than my dinner.
Well, did you even taste it? Because you told me that you ate yours American style. Please shed some light on what you mean by that.
Well, there's different variations of American style. The two that I can immediately think of are eating while you're driving.
Which was my guess.
Which is not safe and not recommended. And the other one is you basically just open your mouth and put the entire meal in 1 to 2 bites and then top it off with a little fluid.
And then pray.
What I've found longitudinally over the course of my life is the praying is getting more important.
Oh, man.
But I did have one other follow-up from our dreams and practicality conversation.
Yeah.
I read technically I listened to the Paulo Coelho book.
The Alchemist.
Oh my God.
I feel like we could reference that for a lot of things.
That story is awesome. And it's so wise and fun to listen to.
And it's so rich it's like you can read 2 sentences and you have to stop it and be like, okay, hold on. Wow.
Yeah, it's very wise, very rich. Lots in there.
Yeah. So for any of you who have not read it, definitely check that out. We should link that in the show notes.
The thing that was so cool is there they were, both of them side by side, dreaming and practicality. Mm-hmm. The whole story.
I know. It's wild. It's wild. I also had one little sidebar. I just wanted to thank everybody who went ahead and rated our podcast. Please keep those coming. I can't tell you the little spark of joy that we get from hearing those and from reading those. So please, please, please continue. I almost imagine we've got this little community that we're building. It's almost like we're Tom Hanks when he's building the fire in Castaway and we're like,
Wilson!
But he's like just barely got the fire going in his palms and he's blowing on it. And we want to be Tom Hanks shirtless with a sweater wrapped around our heads, dancing around a big bonfire eventually, right? Like that is the goal.
I love that. I was thinking of a fire analogy for this earlier on my own, which is hilarious that you brought one up.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like building a fire with wet wood. You have to tend to the crap out of it.
Yes.
But eventually the wood will dry out.
That's your outdoorsmanship coming through. See, I've never once tried to make a fire with wet wood. But I would imagine that's probably not the way you do it.
That kind of shit is for idiots.
Right.
But who's comparing?
Speaking of, on to our topic today.
Ooh.
That was a loaded word, comparison. Do tell, what are we talking about?
Well, I think we just wanted to talk about it because it's something that seems, at least when we talked about it in the context of ourselves and our view of the world, it seems like something that is very much a reality for many, many people. Certainly you and I.
Oh, God, yes.
And, you know, the one thing about comparison is it usually leaves us feeling bad. We all do it. And we live in this culture of competition. I don't know if that's the same in every place in the world, but definitely in the United States, we're taught to be competitive, and that just breeds almost habitual comparison.
It does. That idea about competition being entangled with the word comparison. I mean, I don't think you can have them exclusively. They kind of go hand in hand.
Right.
And it is really interesting, even from like the most innocent little competitive, healthy competition to not so great for you competition.
Right.
This also dovetails into what we talked about in our last episode regarding social media in particular. That is something that is always in our faces. And so the opportunity for comparison is a lot more readily available, I would say. And you said we all do it. I think that's 100% true. I think it is a part of the human experience as a whole.
Yes.
And I think the reason for that is that there's this compulsion to do it to see if we fit in, to see if we belong and if we're worthy, right?
I love the way you say compulsion.
Yeah, well, it is, right?
I wish I said it like that.
Well, compared to me, no. But it is. It because we know it's not good for us. Most of us know, are aware that, oh, I'm doing the comparison thing, but we still do it. And I think that's why I think we are looking as human beings. We want that connection. We want to know we belong and that we're not isolated. And that is why we're doing the comparison game. It's built into our DNA. So spoiler alert, we're not here to say that comparison is going anywhere. You're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah. So just to frame the show a little bit, we want to explore our own experiences and specifically, where does it show up in midlife and how does it typically affect us? And we'll make some other stops along the way.
I think also it's interesting to consider, is there ever a time that comparison is actually a good thing for us? And what does that look like?
Well, we'll talk about that.
We will. I mean, we're not going to answer anything here, but we're going to talk about it. And then also, like when comparison is not serving us, then what do we do with that? How do we manage that? Assuming that it's part of the human experience, it's not going anywhere.
Okay, so with that, we should proceed. Section 1, where does comparison show up in midlife?
Do tell.
So I think kind of at the top of the funnel, when I think about comparison, it shows up in all of the different roles that I play as a son, as a sibling, as a student, as an athlete, as an employee, as a parent, as a partner, all of the above and more.
Yeah.
But these are really confined, definable. I mean, we just came up with a silly example. You said the word compulsion, and I was joking, but there was this little inkling of comparison there.
Yeah.
And I could have taken that further. I didn't.
Right.
But it's always right close.
What I'm noticing about what you said about all these roles, I think of roles in life as they're very connected to action, right? Like what it is you're doing, you're serving in a given role. And so I'm wondering if there's a lot about performance here.
Tons.
Yeah.
It's about managing the expectations of what I'm not sure. And we've talked about this a little bit before, how in life, sometimes we can have this whole set of expectations. And when I really stop to ask myself, well, where did this come from? That's enlightening. But it wasn't until about 40 years old that I even started to to really break those down.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And there's a little bit about values here too.
Say more about that.
Well, if my value is to be seen as the number one athlete or the best employee at work or father of the year or to own a house,
right,
those are almost like destinations versus if my value is to be an honest, loving, authentic partner,
right,
or worker or
that's going
parent.
to impact the way that you compare yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's not a destination. There's no endpoint on that.
Right. That makes sense. Aside from athlete, because I'm not one.
Oh, you're a fuck of a skier. You just don't know it yet.
Well,
I wish you all could see her on video now. She's stretching.
I have to stretch. Otherwise, I'm going to break or tear tendons or something when we go skiing in a few weeks. That's I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I see comparison a lot of other places too. I think for me, it pops up a lot whenever I do something where I'm stepping outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
When I'm pushing that boundary, I instantly compare myself to anyone else who's doing that thing that I'm doing, and they're doing it exceptionally well. And it triggers that imposter syndrome in me, and it also screws around with my whole perfectionism problem. I'm not going to try to do something if I'm not going to be the best at it. That's silly.
And by the way, we were talking about performance. I mean, that's a performance thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's why it caught my eye. I was like, yeah. I also notice it a lot. Again, to sort of tie back to episode 4, where we're talking about screens and social media, I notice it a ton there. The thing that really catches me the most are these before and after photos, whether it's some kind of fitness thing that's being advertised or makeup or anti-aging crap. A lot of these ads, it just breeds that comparison culture. Even though you're comparing the same person to the same person, it instantly hooks you into thinking about where you fit into that, right? And I don't know. I never end up feeling good, is my point. I also notice, to take your parenting thing to another level, sort of the way that we parent our kids, not in terms of necessarily how we're comparing ourselves to other parents, but the way that we push this comparison thing onto our kids too. We will get them involved in these sports, which are great for them.
Yeah.
But there's so many parents out there that are like, you have to go practice, you have to be the best. And I think really filling up their schedules and feeling like they have to keep up with a certain standard that their buddy across the street is holding.
Well, that's such a complicated topic because you're also, as the parent, attached to the outcome of that too.
100%. It gets really sticky.
And you're teaching them that.
And that's exactly what I mean. Yes, there is that part of you comparing yourself as a parent is in there.
Yeah.
But then we're also passing that on to them. And so on we go in this cycle.
Yeah.
I feel like we need a story time.
Story time.
Do you have a specific story of when you've really engaged in comparison?
I kind of chose a topic of which I have tortured myself over decades with comparison.
Oh, goody. Let's hear it.
Okay, so I have made it to this point in life, and I have never owned a house or any piece of property ever. And I've always attached a certain importance to that. And I've always wanted to own a house. And I've found myself over literally decades comparing myself to everybody that has a house that's around my age. And by the way, that's pretty much most people. It's not everybody. It's probably, at least in this country, the majority of people.
Yeah.
And if I look at the people that I'm surrounded with most, or by most, a lot of them have homes, and some of them are really nice homes. And it's led to all kinds of kind of self-shaming and negative self-talk.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember there were times when I was in leadership positions in work, and I would feel like I can't have anybody over ever because I don't have a nice home on a really nice lot with a pool and a patio and a place to entertain and all of those things. So it was definitely a way that I make myself feel less than.
Right.
And what's funny now is I definitely still want a house.
Yeah.
But what's changing is what that means for me. And what I'm starting to get away from is taking it as personally, comparing it to my own self-image. Like now, having a house is about having a place to live that I love and is attached to where I want to be, and it's less attached to what will people think of me based on my house.
This feeds into the values thing that you were talking about.
Definitely does. It's a complete shift. Like I want the same thing.
Right.
But it feels different, and it's just a totally different approach now.
Yeah. Because initially it was like having a house, you were making that mean something about you.
Right.
And now the idea of having a house is about what?
It's just about having a place that I love where I can cultivate creativity and invite people that I want to spend time with that are important to me and have a place that's safe and
which are all values.
All values and all around connection.
Yeah. It's not outside expectation based.
Right.
It is internally based.
Right. And I'm convinced that even if I had obtained even a very large house 10 years ago, it would not have instantly created the contentment that having those sort of values is starting to create in my life.
Right. Or maybe, no, I'm kidding. It totally wouldn't have. But we could always hope, right?
This is America.
We could always hope. This is the land of consumerism.
And I'm not saying that I wouldn't enjoy a nice house and nice things, but it's about what's underneath.
Yeah, the motivation behind it is totally different. Yeah. That's interesting.
So what's your story?
Mine feeds a little bit back into the imposter syndrome thing. So a few years back, I applied to go to a creative writing conference up at Martha's Vineyard. So you get accepted, and then you spend the week week in the summer at Martha's Vineyard, which is an amazing thing. And especially when you have 4 children at home and no life, it is a really amazing thing. Really, I just wanted to go to be by myself.
Did you actually go to the conference?
I mean, I will never tell. No, I did go. And so at the end of the week, it's a very small, I think it was like 20 people total that attend this thing. And most of them are some of them are even already published writers. They are fairly accomplished. They were writing majors. Is that a thing? Writing majors? Creative writing majors? I don't know. They do a lot of writing and reading. And I'm over there straightening teeth. So already I'm feeling a little bit out of, like, I don't know that I really belong here. But the end of the week, after we have all these seminars, the big buildup is, okay, we're going to have this open mic night where, you don't have to read, but we really would like for everyone to prepare something and read it to everybody. And I almost threw up on the floor hearing this. But they told us that kind of early in the week so that we could be thinking, we could be working on something. And so I did.
I'm sure your perfectionists loved that.
Oh my God, I know. So I crafted this little short story.
At like 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't sleep the entire week. And, it was one of those situations where you sit down and you just go up when you want to go. And so, that feeling when you're like, I'm going to need to get up, and you're telling your body to get up, but nothing's moving. That happened to me repeatedly until I think towards the last quarter of people that had to go, I finally stood up and went up there. And I read it. It was fine-ish.
Yeah.
I feel like at the end, my memory of it is crickets and then like the smallest little sympathy applause. Right?
Yeah.
Is what it felt like to me. And leaving there, I know at the very end, we all took a picture as a big group. And I just remember thinking, I don't belong here. And everybody knows it. Everybody here is this amazing writer. And I'm like the sore thumb that sticks out. So I actually left that conference and I think I quit working on whatever it was I was writing pretty shortly after that. So it kind of halted me in that arena.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So that imposter syndrome thing kind of got in the way of me pursuing that.
But you've gotten back to it, writing. No.
Not really.
Not
I mean,
like
not
Yeah.
the book that I was trying to write. Not like that. And that doesn't mean I never will. Again, that was a few years ago and a lot has happened since then. And I feel like I'm learning a lot more about myself and life in general that's helping me break free of some of this stuff. But that was a very real moment of comparison for me.
One of the things that comes to me as I listen to this story, it's a bigger observation. You, as Morgan, love to play at the edge of the creativity pool.
Oh, yeah.
Just jump in already. Jump.
No, it's more like, I would say in a public arena. That's true.
Yeah.
Privately, I immerse myself in it a lot more.
I know.
It's interesting. But yes, publicly, no.
But you still keep getting called to that edge.
I know. Well, I think that's part of what this podcast is.
I wish I could do Jeremy Irons' voice when he reads The Alchemist.
Just give it a go.
Follow the omens.
Wow, I felt like I was right there. How does comparison typically affect us?
Well, comparison is the thief of joy, which is a quote of Brene Brown. But I also think that it's just such a big disconnector. If I'm sitting somewhere and I'm comparison, I'm just sitting in my own shit. Like it's about my own reality and not much else. And it's interesting because I would bet money that if there was more than one person in that writers' conference that thought what you said was great. And I would even go so far as to say that somebody even walked away and recalled it later, which is a huge compliment. But, when you're really stuck in your own stuff and your story to yourself is whatever it is, that gets lost.
Well, and that's just it. You create a story from it.
Right.
And then you buy into that. And then you operate from that place.
And then what happens is nothing.
Right. It's a big bunch of bullshit.
Or a whole lot of things that really amount to not feeling satisfied in the end.
Yeah.
I could, like I said about the house, I could have gotten a big house. But if that had happened 10 years ago, I probably still wouldn't have felt satisfied because if that's born out of comparison, I probably wouldn't even appreciate the house because I'd already be comparing myself to the next thing or the next person.
Yeah.
trying to get to the next thing. So it pushes us sometimes in the wrong direction. And I also believe that for me, if I'm stuck in comparison, I'm distracted from my own unique special thing.
Right.
One of the things that I'm so enamored with in life is not only figuring out and exploring what mine is, but also exploring and seeing and realizing what others' thing is.
Yeah, and if we're all trying to be the same,
then where is the uniqueness?
We're defeating the purpose.
Right.
That is true.
So, one of the things around even doing this show is I can get, if I let myself, into a place of comparison, because I look at you and I look at the talents that you have, and what I can do with myself is compare and say, well, I can't do that and I don't do this that way.
Yeah.
And then what happens is all the things that I do really well,
they don't even come up to the surface.
They get smaller and smaller. And it robs everybody. It robs me. It robs you.
It robs the project.
Yeah.
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 That's interesting. A lot of what you're talking about is how comparison impacts you as a person, which I think is maybe the most obvious. I think we've all been there and we've all experienced it to some degree. I think it's interesting too to think about, like, what does it do to us collectively as a society, right? And I think what you said, it keeps you moving towards things that maybe aren't really meant for you because you're too busy trying to sort of keep up with the Joneses. And you're buying into this hustle culture.
Yeah.
Which is so common in the United States, at least.
Right.
And it prioritizes just keeping up with everybody over your own well-being as a person, as a whole person. Nothing's ever going to be enough. You're always chasing this carrot. And honestly, it's not sustainable either. It just exhausts you, right? I think in midlife by now, we've all sort of hit that wall of like, yeah, this sucks. I don't want to do this forever,
Yeah, well, when you hold this carrot out and you say, when I have my kids and when they get to be graduated from high school or even in middle school and I have my house and my career is well developed, then I'm going to feel great. And when you get there and you don't feel that way, guess what happens? Midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because it's kind of this like, what in the actual fuck have I been doing?
For half my life.
And why don't I feel better?
Also, the idea of comparison just keeps the world boring. It takes away that special thing, just like you said.
Yeah.
There's less innovation. Like, where do you think these awesome ideas come from? They come from people who think outside the box, not from someone who's trying to do what the guy next to him is doing.
Yeah.
So there's that. I also, one of the things I really wanted to touch on is that there's an implicit judgment that comes with comparison. You are judging the other person, maybe positively, right? You're making a judgment about yourself also. And that has an impact on both of those people.
I feel like you said something really important there. We've been kind of talking about comparison a lot, or at least suggesting that it's looking up at somebody else, but it can also be looking down.
100% it could be. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
And either way, there's judgment to yourself and to the one you're comparing yourself to. An example of this that I will go into is, 5 years ago, I kind of launched into this digital fitness program, which is a wonderful program. I have nothing bad to say about the program. I still subscribe to this program, so there are a lot of great things about it. The issue that I had as someone who was trying to promote this program, especially via social media, was that I thought I needed to position myself in such a way. There's a lot going on here. With social media, you have to get people's attention, right? How do you get people's attention when you're talking about fitness? Are you talking about energy levels? No. You're talking about how many packs of abs you can see.
Right.
Or at least that was my story that I was going along with. And so it reached this point where I was the one putting out all these before and afters, posting pictures of myself, basically in a bra and underwear. This was me before, and this is me after.
Yeah.
And guess what? I'm comparing myself in those pictures. So there's a judgment against the old me. Like the old me wasn't good enough. And so then what does that say to the person looking?
Right.
If you look like the old me, you're not good enough.
Right. But you can be if you sign up.
Exactly.
Right.
And it really started to feel gross. And I still feel guilty about it because someone finally said to me, Morgan, I just... seeing you do all your workouts and all this kind of stuff, it's great that you're doing that for yourself, but it really just kind of makes everybody else feel like shit. And I was like, damn, that hit hard.
Did you say thank you?
Thank you for that constructive feedback.
I mean, seriously, I don't say that lightly. That's a courageous piece of feedback.
Yeah, it was eye-opening for me. And it wasn't long after that I went through all of my social media and I removed all of it. And that's not to say that the program's no good. It was that my way of going about it was not okay. It was not in alignment with my personal values.
Yeah.
There's the values again. I don't ever want to make someone else feel less than, like they're not good enough right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other interesting thing that comes up to me is, what does that mean for someone who has a lot to give and is a bright light, right? And I'm not saying I am that person. I'm just saying anybody who has a bright light to shine, they've got their unique thing.
Right.
It can sometimes be hard to shine brightly because everybody else is going to form judgments. They're busy comparing.
Right.
They might have jealousy, and that might dissuade you from shining as brightly.
Yeah.
It can kind of affect you that way too.
I think that's an excellent point.
And I don't think that we should ever make ourselves smaller or dim our light to make other people feel more comfortable either.
I agree. But to achieve that, you have to have a rock solid image of yourself and set of values that you follow.
100%. Yeah. And it has to be authentic. It's that authentic, unique thing that you have that is undeniable.
God, I better hurry up and figure out what the fuck mine is.
Come on.
I'm working on it.
I mean, I think it's an ever-evolving thing that we're working on. But
So do you think that comparison can ever be a good thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. What do you think?
If you pushed me into a yes or no,
I'm pushing you.
I would say no.
You said no. Okay.
But I will say that it's that donkey that will kick you in the ass. And I've used it that way as a motivator, right?
Yeah.
But a motivator to get where?
I know.
It's like the treadmill to nowhere.
Isn't that fun though?
It's fun when you think you're on the treadmill and you're going somewhere.
Yeah, it's not exactly the healthiest version of motivation, but in a pinch, it will get you off the couch.
That's true.
I guess it could sort of be good that way.
Right.
I think also, kind of going against what I just said a minute ago, self-comparison can sometimes be useful. Like if you have you're in the middle of reaching a big goal and you're halfway there and you're kind of discouraged and you look back at where you started and you go, look how far I've come. You're comparing where you were to where you are now so that you feel compelled to keep going. That can be really useful. But also, back to the fitness thing, like I can compare my body right now to my body when I was doing that program like religiously. Right. And I'm like, God, I became a fat slob. You know what I mean? It can work both ways. Right. So you have to be careful.
I feel you with the self-comparison thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't disagree, but I personally call it something different.
What do you call it?
I would just call it self-reflection.
Yeah.
Versus self-comparison.
Fair enough.
And I think that's a personal choice because comparison elicits such a different set of things for me, of which we've been talking about.
It's like a bad word.
It's like a bad word.
In our vernacular.
Yeah.
I know. That's true. And I think it is very important to self-reflect often.
And when I say self-reflect, there could be an element of what you describe as self-comparison. Like, why did I do that? When I did this, what was the impact versus when I did that? What was the impact? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's healthy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what we're saying is that when it gets down to brass tacks, the answer is no, comparison's probably never a good thing. And that what really works is something different, which is self-reflection. And it really is. It's all about being connected to yourself. Everything is.
Yeah.
When you have your own values and your own, where you're going and what you want and why you want it, and it's internally motivated, then it doesn't matter what everybody else has and what they're doing.
Yes.
So basically we've decided it's not great. Is that what we're saying? Yes. So basically it's not going anywhere.
Right.
If it really is part of the human experience, then what do we do with it when it shows up? How can we manage it when it's not serving us? I think for me, it's just noticing it, being aware of it, that I'm doing it, and acknowledging that it's totally normal, first of all, because I don't want to get into this shame spiral about, oh my God, there I go again. I'm comparing and then I'm judging myself, judge. Just notice it, acknowledge it for a normal thing. That's step one to me.
Yeah. So sit the fuck down.
Yeah.
When I feel myself in that mode of comparison, it is time to pause. And it's also time to give space for that little voice or part of me that I'm feeling getting smaller to just let it bubble up. Let it bubble up and not get stuck in what that will look like to the other person, what it looks like to me. Just let all that go. Now, that, by the way, is much easier said than done.
Like most things, yeah.
Right. And it is a practice. That's not something that I will ever 100% achieve. And I'm good with that. I can get better and better at it.
I think there's also an element in there, back to self-reflecting, when you sit down and you give that space of asking yourself what it is you're making it mean.
Yes.
That you're not hitting that mark, whatever that mark is. You know, we're great storytellers as people. Everybody is a great storyteller. We make crazy stories up.
Crazy.
And then we totally accept them as truth.
Yeah.
Totally.
And by the way, I'm so good, I'll make your story up too.
Yeah. Amen. Right? I know. It's so true.
Yeah.
So yeah, just kind of separating out, okay, what am I making this mean?
Right.
And then what are the facts?
All right. So is it micronutrient time?
What's your 1 or 2 main takeaways from discussing comparison today?
Comparison subtracts from connection.
Yeah.
Keeps me stuck in myself. And letting go of comparison helps me, but I also venture to say it could help others have the space to shine their light too.
Agreed.
Helps me shine mine, helps others shine theirs.
Yeah. I think for me, the takeaway is that I don't have to choose. When comparison bubbles up in me, I don't have to choose to act from that space. You know, I think a little bit of what you were saying, sit down, take a beat, whatever you need to put things into perspective, and then act. I also believe that the more that I get in touch with and stay connected with my authentic self, then the less comparison is really going to be able to take hold of the way that I feel.
Yes.
It may show up, but it may not elicit the same feelings as it can when you are so far away from who you really are.
I had this funny analogy when you were talking about that, where comparison at times in my life has felt like someone's literally grabbing me by the throat and making it hard for me to breathe. And it's getting to a point where comparison is now just tickling me in a really annoying way. And I'm like, stop doing that.
That's what I mean. Precisely.
Yeah.
Now you're the doughboy.
God, it's about time. I mean, I feel so honored.
That wraps up our thoughts, I think, on comparison. I would love to know what other people have to say, if anyone wants to chime in on the conversation.
I would too. And if you say that you've never compared before,
you're full of shit.
I do not fucking believe you.
You're more full of shit than other people who are not full of shit.
Are you comparing right now?
See what I did there? All right. Well, enough silliness. I think that's it for today.
All right. Rate us. Share it with a friend.
Please do.
Email us. Tell us what you think.
Stop us on the street. Give us a hug. Yep. I don't know.
We're just going to keep blowing on wet wood here. Back to the fire analogy.
I'm going to go dance around a bonfire now.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
I have made fire.
And with that, we'll see you next time.
In the mud.
Thanks for being with us in the mud today.
If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the show. This is going to make sure you never miss an episode, and it's going to help us grow our muddy community, which would mean the world to us.
See you next time in the mud.